Hello, everyone, and welcome to our story today. This is not just a lesson. This is not just a story. This is a journey through the life of a girl who became a light for the whole world. Her name was Susan B. Anthony. She was not born rich. She was not the most popular or the strongest. In fact, many people thought she would never be heard. But Susan B. Anthony had something very special. She had questions in her heart. She had dreams in her eyes, and she had a fire in her soul that never went out. In this story, you will learn English with emotion. You will read easy words, but feel big feelings. You will grow your vocabulary and your hope. We will follow young Susan B. Anthony through the streets of her small town, into her home, into her mind, and into the dark nights where she worked with just one goal: to make life better for others, especially for women. You will see how one person with no money, no fame, and no help can still change the world, with just an idea and the courage to try. So sit back, listen closely, and let your heart open wide. Because the story of Susan B. Anthony is not just her story. It is a light for your life too. On a cold winter day, February 15, 1820, in the quiet town of Adams, Massachusetts, a baby girl was born into a family with deep moral values and a quiet determination. Her name was Susan Brownell Anthony. She entered a world where women were expected to be silent, obedient, and unseen in public life, but her soul was born for the fight. Her parents were Quakers, believers in equality, education, and integrity. Her father, Daniel Anthony, was a stern abolitionist and a disciplined cotton mill owner who believed women should be as educated and self-reliant as men. Her mother, Lucy, was gentle but firm, nurturing a household where critical thinking was encouraged. It was a rare environment for a girl in the 1820s, and it planted the seeds of courage and independence in Susan's heart. As a child, Susan was deeply intelligent and observant. She learned to read and write at an early age, and when she was sent to a local school, she was appalled to discover she wasn't allowed to learn mathematics because she was a girl. That injustice lit a spark in her that would burn for the rest of her life. She demanded access to those lessons, and eventually she won. By the age of 15, Susan began teaching at a local school. She worked tirelessly, believing education could lift people, especially women, out of ignorance and dependence. But when she discovered that male teachers were paid more than twice her salary for the same work, something snapped. It was her first personal brush with gender inequality, and she never forgot it. In the 1840s and 1850s, the nation was in turmoil over the issue of slavery. Susan, already a passionate abolitionist, found herself aligning with other reformers. It was during this period she met the woman who would become her lifelong friend and partner in activism, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Their bond was immediate. Stanton had the pen and the vision. Anthony had the energy, the organization, and the voice. Together, they traveled across the country, on horseback, by train, and by foot, giving speeches in town halls, churches, barns, and anywhere people would listen. They faced jeers, stones, and sometimes empty rooms. But Susan kept going. She once said, "I declare to you that woman must not depend upon the protection of man, but must be taught to protect herself." They fought for women's suffrage, equal pay, property rights, and legal recognition. In 1869, after feeling betrayed by the 15th Amendment, which gave African American men the vote but excluded women, Susan and Stanton founded the National Woman Suffrage Association. They began publishing their own newspaper, The Revolution, and boldly demanded change from the government and society. One of the boldest moments of her life came in 1872. Susan, refusing to accept that the Constitution did not protect her right to vote, marched into a polling station in Rochester, New York, and cast her vote in the presidential election. She was arrested days later. Her trial was a spectacle. The judge did not even allow the jury to deliberate. He found her guilty and fined her $100. Susan rose to her feet and declared, "Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. I shall never pay $1 of your unjust penalty." She never paid. The government never pursued her again. But in that courtroom, in that act of defiance, Susan had struck a blow that would echo for generations. She continued to fight. Year after year, she presented petitions to Congress. She wrote letters. She knocked on doors. She spoke to presidents, including Theodore Roosevelt. She faced setbacks, including betrayal by male reformers and divisions within the women's movement itself. Many nights, she slept in train cars or in the homes of strangers. She was often exhausted, often broke, but never defeated. In her final years, Susan reflected on the struggle. She once said, "I never dreamed that we could win this fight in my lifetime. But I always knew we would win." She died on March 13, 1906, in Rochester at the age of 86. Thousands came to pay their respects. 14 years later, the 19th Amendment was ratified, granting American women the right to vote. It was called the Susan B. Anthony Amendment. Though she never lived to see it, her fingerprints were on every word of it. Today, her legacy is not just in history books or museums. It's in the act of voting. It's in the courage of every woman who dares to speak truth to power. It's in the knowledge that one woman, with no political office, no fortune, and no permission, can rise up and move the world. Susan B. Anthony became a legend not because she was born extraordinary, but because she chose not to be silent. She turned every no into a rallying cry, every failure into fuel, and every obstacle into a reason to press forward. She once said, "There never will be complete equality until women themselves help to make laws and elect lawmakers." That vision lives on, not just in her words, but in the courage of those who continue her fight. And perhaps the truest measure of her greatness is this: when Susan B. Anthony died, she left behind no children, no wealth, no titles. She left behind something far greater: millions of women who could finally be heard. Her story didn't end with her death. In fact, the years following her passing only deepened her legend. Susan B. Anthony's name became synonymous with perseverance, with sacrifice, and with the belief that justice, no matter how long delayed, must come. In 1920, when the 19th Amendment was finally ratified, generations of women celebrated the victory she had dedicated her entire life to. Though she had not lived to see it, her image was carried in parades, her words quoted in speeches, and her dream realized at the ballot box. Women of all races, classes, and beliefs whispered her name in gratitude. But the world didn't forget her there. In 1979, more than 70 years after her death, the U.S. Treasury honored her legacy by placing her portrait on the U.S. dollar coin, making her the first woman in American history to appear on a circulating coin. It was a small but powerful recognition of her monumental impact. Even now, her gravesite in Rochester, New York becomes a pilgrimage site every election day. Women, young and old, line up to place their "I voted" stickers on her headstone, a quiet, moving tribute to a woman who once risked arrest to cast her own ballot. In those moments, history folds into the present, and the echo of her courage still rings. Schools and institutions across the country bear her name. Statues have been erected. Books have been written. Yet none of it can fully capture the fire that drove Susan B. Anthony, the pain of injustice, the lonely nights, the endless travel, and the unwavering hope she carried through it all. She was never a woman who sought comfort. She was never someone who waited for permission. She was a storm wrapped in compassion, a warrior cloaked in principle. Her voice was calm, but her message roared across a century. In a world that still wrestles with inequality, Susan B. Anthony's life remains a lesson, a story not just of women's rights, but of human rights. Of what one person can do when they believe deeply, speak boldly, and never give up. Her words still challenge us today. Cautious, careful people, always casting about to preserve their reputations, can never bring about a reform. And so, she didn't play it safe. She lived a life of disruption, of rebellion, and of purpose. Susan B. Anthony wasn't just fighting for a right to vote. She was fighting for the right to exist fully, freely, and equally. And because she did, generations after her walk paths, she carved with her own hands. She did not live to see the revolution's victory, but she became its spark, its soul, and its symbol. A woman born in a world that told her no became the reason millions would say yes to change. That is how Susan B. Anthony became a legend, not by power, not by wealth, but by unwavering faith in what was right. And through that, she changed America forever. And so, Susan B. Anthony's life closed not with the satisfaction of personal victory, but with the quiet triumph of knowing her footsteps were leading others forward. She was a builder of bridges she would never cross, a planter of seeds she would never see bloom. But because of her, millions now walk freely across those bridges and stand tall beneath the trees she planted. Her legacy is not etched only in stone or printed on coins. It lives in every girl who dares to speak up, in every woman who walks into a voting booth with confidence, and in every person who believes that justice is worth the fight. Susan B. Anthony taught us that change is not always instant nor easy, but that it is always possible. She reminded the world that one voice, strong, persistent, and unafraid, can ignite a revolution. She may not have lived to cast a legal vote, but her life was the most powerful vote ever cast for equality. And in the end, that vote counted more than any ever recorded. She changed the course of history not by waiting for the world to be ready, but by demanding it rise to meet her. And in doing so, she left us a simple but enduring truth. Failure is impossible. With those words, she passed the torch to all who would come after her. And the world has never been the same. If you enjoy the video, please like, subscribe and share.